I paid for my son's wedding with everything I had. And the very next day, he threw me out like I was nothing. At 63 years old, I never imagined my life would turn this ugly overnight. Not after all the years I spent building everything for my family. My name is Michael Harris. I'm a retired factory supervisor from Pennsylvania. And what I'm about to tell you still doesn't feel real, even now. Before you see what happens next in my life, subscribe to this channel. And in the comments, tell me your city or country, and whether you've ever seen family turn against family like this. I was never a rich man. But I was responsible. For over 4 decades, I worked double shifts, weekends, holidays. I skipped vacations. I drove old cars long after they should have been replaced. Why? Because I had one son. And I believed my job was to make sure he never struggled the way I did. When my wife passed away 8 years ago, it was just me and my son Aaron. I raised him alone after that. Cooked for him. Encouraged him. Defended him even when he was wrong. So when Aaron came home one evening and said, "Dad, I'm getting married," I felt proud. He introduced me to his fiancée, Emily. She was polite, quiet, always smiling, but never really warm with me. From the beginning, the wedding plans were expensive. Way more expensive than I expected. But Aaron looked at me and said, "Dad, this is once in a lifetime." So I agreed to help. At first, it was just the venue deposit. Then the catering upgrade. Then the decorations. Then the guest list exploded. Each time, Aaron promised, "I'll pay you back." And each time I said, "Don't worry about it." I sold my old pickup truck. I emptied a savings account my wife and I had built together. I even dipped into my retirement fund, money meant for my medical care, my future. By the end, I had paid for nearly everything. The wedding day itself was beautiful. Music, laughter, champagne everywhere. People congratulated me, saying, "You must be proud of your son." And I was. During the reception, Aaron hugged me tight. He said, "Dad, I couldn't have done this without you. I'll always take care of you." Those words mattered to me more than he'll ever know. That night, I went to bed tired but peaceful. I thought, this is what a father's sacrifice looks like. The next morning changed everything. Aaron asked me to sit down at the dining table. Emily stood next to him, arms folded, expression blank. Something felt wrong immediately. "Dad," Aaron said, not looking at me. "Emily and I have talked." I smiled and said, "About the honeymoon?" Emily sighed. "No. About the house." My heart skipped. This house wasn't just a building. I built it with my wife 30 years ago. I paid every mortgage payment. I fixed every leak. I buried memories in every room. Aaron slid a folder across the table. Inside were papers. Legal papers. Emily spoke instead of him. "We need you to move out. This house belongs to us now." I laughed nervously. "You're joking." Aaron finally looked up. "It's already done, Dad." That's when he told me. A few weeks before the wedding, he had convinced me to sign some paperwork. He said it was for tax purposes. To make things easier later. I trusted him. Those papers transferred the house into his name. "You used me," I whispered. Aaron shrugged. "You signed it. You paid for the wedding voluntarily. No one forced you." Emily added, cold and sharp. "We want privacy. We're starting our life. You're in the way." I felt something inside my chest collapse. I reminded Aaron of his promises. Of his mother. Of everything I had given him. He stood up and said words I'll never forget. "Dad, you're old. You don't need a big house anymore. They gave me 1 day. 1 day to pack my life into boxes." I watched strangers walk through my home, measuring walls, discussing renovations, while I packed my clothes like a guest who overstayed his welcome. That night I slept in my car. No call. No message. No apology. For weeks, I felt humiliated, ashamed, angry at myself for trusting too easily. But slowly, something else grew inside me. Clarity. I started reading every document I had ever signed. I found inconsistencies. Dates that didn't align. A missing witness signature. I contacted a lawyer. Quietly. And that's when I learned something important. What my son and daughter-in-law did wasn't as clean as they thought. They believed I was weak, broken, finished. They were wrong. Because I didn't lose everything that day. I lost my illusion. And once that was gone, I became dangerous. I didn't tell anyone I had contacted a lawyer. Not my friends. Not my relatives. And certainly not my son. I stayed quiet on purpose. People think silence means weakness. What they don't understand is that silence is often preparation. I moved into a small rented room on the edge of town. One bed. One chair. One window. Every night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led me here. Not with tears anymore. With focus. The lawyer's name was Thomas Keller. Mid-50s. Calm voice. Sharp eyes. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke. I laid everything out on his desk. The wedding expenses, the house documents, the papers my son had asked me to sign. He didn't react right away. He just read. After nearly 20 minutes, he leaned back and said, "Mr. Harris, your son made several mistakes." That was the first time I felt my spine straighten in weeks. Thomas explained it slowly. The house transfer had issues. The witness signature was invalid. The timing was suspiciously close to the wedding payments. More importantly, there was evidence of undue influence. "You were financially supporting him at the time," Thomas said. "And he used that trust to rush you into signing." I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. "Can I get my house back?" Thomas nodded once. "Yes. But it won't be quick. And it won't be pretty." I told him something I hadn't said out loud yet. "I'm not afraid of ugly anymore." That's when we filed the case. The legal notice was delivered to my son's house on a Monday morning. I didn't see his reaction, but I heard about it. A neighbor called me later that day. Said Aaron was yelling. Emily was screaming. Papers were thrown across the lawn. That night, my phone rang. It was Aaron. For the first time since throwing me out, his voice shook. "Dad, why are you doing this?" I waited before answering. "Why did you?" Silence. Then he said, "You're embarrassing us. People will talk." I laughed. Not loudly. Just once. "You threw your father out the day after your wedding," I said. "You embarrassed yourself." Emily grabbed the phone. Her tone was sharp, angry. "You're just bitter because you're alone," I replied calmly. "I'm alone because I trusted the wrong people." They hung up. The court process began fast. Subpoenas. Bank records. Wedding invoices, all paid from my accounts. Every receipt told the same story. I hadn't gifted them a wedding. I had financed their lifestyle. As weeks passed, cracks appeared in their perfect marriage. Aaron stopped posting photos online. Emily deleted comments. Friends started asking questions. Then came the first hearing. I walked into that courtroom wearing the same suit I had worn to the wedding. Not out of sentiment. Out of symbolism. Aaron avoided my eyes. Emily looked confident, until the judge began speaking. The judge reviewed the timeline carefully. Wedding payments. House transfer. Eviction. He looked directly at my son and asked, "Why was your father removed from the home immediately after these transactions?" Aaron stuttered. Emily tried to answer for him. The judge raised a hand. I asked him. That moment mattered. The judge ordered a temporary injunction. They could not sell the house. They could not alter ownership. They could not remove my belongings. And then came the line that changed everything. "Mr. Harris," the judge said, "you have the right to return to the property until this case is resolved." Emily's face went pale. Aaron looked like he might be sick. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded. Moving back into that house felt strange. My furniture was gone. My wife's photos had been removed. But the walls still remembered me. Emily refused to look at me. Aaron barely spoke. The tension was thick. One evening, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. Emily accused Aaron of being weak. Aaron accused Emily of pushing him too far. That's when I understood something important. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about character. They believed love was a transaction. I believed love was a responsibility. More evidence surfaced. Text messages where Emily discussed locking everything down after the wedding. Emails suggesting they planned my removal months in advance. The lawyer smiled when he saw them. "This changes the case," he said. The next hearing was brutal. The judge questioned Emily directly. "Did you encourage your husband to remove his father from the home?" She hesitated. That hesitation cost her. The court ruled the transfer void pending final judgment. Ownership reverted, temporarily, to me. Aaron stood frozen. Emily whispered something furious in his ear. That night, they packed their bags. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't apologize. They left. Alone in my house again, I walked through each room slowly. Not with anger. With closure. I sat in the living room where my wife used to read. I touched the wall where we had marked our son's height as a child. I realized something powerful. I hadn't lost my son that day after the wedding. I had lost him long before, when he chose entitlement over gratitude. And I finally understood something else too. Justice isn't revenge. Justice is reclaiming your dignity. And the final decision was still coming. The house was quiet after they left. Too quiet. For the first time in months, I slept in my own bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Not because of fear. Because of clarity. In the silence, memories returned. Not the good ones. The warning signs I had ignored. The rushed paperwork. Emily answering questions meant for my son. The way they spoke about the house like it was already theirs. I stopped blaming myself. Trust is not stupidity. Betrayal is a choice. The next court date was set for 6 weeks later. Those weeks changed everything. Aaron tried to call me twice. I didn't answer. Emily sent one message. Just one sentence. "If you drop the case, we can talk." I showed it to my lawyer. He smiled without humor. "They're scared now," he said. During discovery, more evidence surfaced. Emails between Emily and a real estate agent, dated before the wedding. She had asked about selling options after ownership transfer. Not if. After. There were text messages too. Messages where Aaron hesitated, questioned the plan. And messages where Emily pushed harder. "Once it's done, he can't undo it. Old people don't fight back." Reading those words felt strange. Not painful. Educational. The court ordered Emily to testify under oath. That morning, she arrived dressed perfectly. Confident walk. Chin raised. But confidence doesn't survive questions. The judge asked about the emails. She claimed they were hypothetical. Then my lawyer asked a simple question. "Why did you contact a real estate agent before the wedding if you had no intention to remove Mr. Harris from the home?" She paused. Too long. Her answer came out defensive, rushed. The judge wrote something down. Then Aaron was called. My son looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Internally. He admitted I paid for the wedding. He admitted asking me to sign papers without explaining them fully. When asked why, his voice broke. "I thought it would just be easier." That sentence echoed in the courtroom. Easier. That's what betrayal often sounds like. The judge leaned forward. "Easier for whom?" Aaron didn't answer. The ruling didn't come that day. But the direction was clear. Outside the courthouse, Emily exploded. She blamed Aaron. She blamed me. She blamed the lawyer. She didn't blame herself. 2 weeks later, Aaron showed up at the house alone. No warning. I opened the door and saw a stranger wearing my son's face. He asked if we could talk. We sat at the same kitchen table where my life had collapsed months earlier. He apologized. Not well. Not fully. He said things like, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." She pressured me. We were stressed. I listened quietly. Then I asked him one question. "If the court hadn't stepped in, would you have ever let me come back?" He didn't answer. That was my answer. I told him something he didn't expect. "I'm not doing this to punish you." He looked confused. "I'm doing this so you understand consequences." He left with tears in his eyes. I didn't follow him. The final hearing arrived. The courtroom was full. Family members. Curious neighbors. Even people from the wedding. The judge spoke clearly. The property transfer was declared invalid. The house legally returned to me, permanently. The judge cited manipulation, undue influence, and coordinated intent. Then he turned to Aaron. "Being someone's child does not entitle you to steal from them." And to Emily. "Marriage does not excuse misconduct." They were ordered to repay part of the wedding expenses. Not because of money. Because of accountability. Outside the courtroom, reporters asked questions. I didn't speak. That night, I walked through my house again. This time, it felt different. Not like a memory. Like ownership. I changed the locks the next morning. Not out of anger. Out of self-respect. Weeks passed. Aaron and Emily separated. Then divorced. I heard it through relatives. Emily moved out of state. Aaron moved into a small apartment. He sent a letter once. Not asking for money. Not asking for forgiveness. Just saying he understood now. I didn't write back. Some lessons don't need replies. I sold the house 6 months later. Not because I was forced to. Because I was free to choose. I downsized. Bought a small place near the coast. I wake up to quiet mornings now. Coffee. Sunlight. Peace. People ask me if I regret paying for the wedding. I don't. What I regret is confusing sacrifice with obligation. Love should never be used as leverage. And family should never be an excuse to destroy someone who trusted you. I lost a son that year. But I found something stronger. My dignity. And I learned this the hard way. You can give someone everything. And they can still try to take more. But when you finally stand up, they realize too late who you really were all along. Life slowed down after the court case, but my mind didn't. Victory doesn't always bring relief right away. Sometimes it brings questions. I moved near the coast because I wanted distance, not just from my son, but from the version of myself who thought love meant unlimited sacrifice. My new place was small. Clean. Quiet. No echo of arguments. No memories fighting for space on the walls. For the first few weeks, I focused on routine. Morning walks. Simple meals. Long stretches of thinking without interruption. People assume revenge is loud. Angry. Dramatic. Mine wasn't. Mine was learning how to breathe again. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Aaron. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the table for 2 days, just to see if curiosity still controlled me. It didn't. When I finally opened it, his handwriting looked unfamiliar, shaky, uncertain. He wrote about the apartment he had moved into. About the silence. About realizing how much I used to do without being asked. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for money. He asked for understanding. That was harder. Understanding doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean reopening doors that nearly crushed you. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Some conversations are better left unfinished. A month later, Emily's name appeared on my phone. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Her voice was different. No sharp edges. No confidence. She said she wanted to apologize. I didn't interrupt. She talked about stress, pressure, fear of starting life without security. Then she said something honest for the first time. I thought if we didn't take it, we'd never get ahead. I replied calmly. You didn't try to get ahead. You tried to climb over me. Silence followed. Then she cried. I didn't comfort her. I didn't attack her. I ended the call politely. Closure doesn't require forgiveness. It requires boundaries. As weeks passed, people from my past reached out. Old co-workers, neighbors, even a few wedding guests. They said things like, "We had no idea. You handled it with dignity. I wouldn't have survived that." I didn't feel strong. I felt awake. One evening, while watching the ocean from my balcony, something shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't replaying the betrayal. I was imagining a future. I started volunteering at a local community workshop, helping younger men learn basic trade skills. Fixing things with my hands again reminded me who I was before everything became emotional. One of the guys there asked me once, "How do you know when to stop giving?" The answer came out before I could think. When giving starts to erase you. That night, I realized something important. What my son did wasn't just about greed. It was about entitlement. He grew up believing my sacrifices were automatic, guaranteed, permanent. I taught him hard work, but I forgot to teach him limits. That responsibility was mine. Another letter arrived months later. This one was from Aaron's lawyer. He was asking for a reduced repayment schedule. I approved it. Not out of kindness. Out of closure. Dragging resentment through time only gives it shelter. I wanted none. I never saw Emily again. I heard she remarried quickly. Moved again. Started over. Some people repeat patterns until consequences finally follow them. Aaron visited the coast once. He didn't come to my door. He stood across the street. I saw him through the window. He looked older. Tired. After a few minutes, he left. That was enough. People think reconciliation needs words. Sometimes it just needs acceptance of distance. As my 64th birthday approached, I did something unexpected. I threw a small gathering. Not family. Friends. People who had shown up when things were ugly. We laughed. Shared food. No tension. No expectations. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. In the quiet darkness, a truth settled in. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot, but it burns out. What remained was clarity. I had given my son everything I knew how to give. What he did with it was his responsibility. The final court documents arrived confirming everything was closed. No appeals. No loose ends. I placed them in a folder and labeled it simply. Resolved. Not revenge. Not loss. Resolution. Standing on my balcony the next morning, watching the waves hit the shore, I understood something I wish I had learned earlier in life. You can love deeply and still walk away. You can be a parent and still protect yourself. And sometimes, the greatest lesson you give your children is showing them what happens when lines are crossed. I didn't rebuild my life loudly. I rebuilt it correctly. And I knew, without doubt, that the final chapter of this story wouldn't be about betrayal. It would be about peace. The ocean had a way of telling the truth without speaking. Every morning, I watched the waves come in strong, break, and then pull back calmly, as if nothing had happened. That's when I understood something important. Strength doesn't always look like force. Sometimes it looks like balance. My days became simple in the best way. Coffee on the balcony. A walk along the shore. Work at the community workshop a few afternoons a week. No one there knew my story unless I chose to tell it. And most days I didn't. I stopped defining myself as a betrayed father, or a victim, or even a survivor. I was just a man living the life he had finally chosen. One evening, a younger volunteer sat beside me and asked why I never talked about my family. I thought for a moment and said, "Because my future deserves more space than my past." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he didn't fully, but he would one day. Aaron didn't disappear from my life completely. He existed, at a distance. Once every few months, I'd receive a short message. No guilt. No drama. Just updates. "I paid this month. I hope you're doing well." That was enough. We weren't rebuilding a relationship. We were respecting boundaries. And that, I learned, was healthier than forced forgiveness. On my 65th birthday, I received one final letter from him. Inside was a simple card. No long explanations. No excuses. Just one sentence. "I finally understand what you lost, and what I took for granted." I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because understanding had finally arrived, even if it came late. That night, I walked along the beach alone. I thought about my wife. About the man I had been when my son was born. About the decades I spent believing love meant never saying no. I realized something that should have been obvious earlier. Sacrifice without limits doesn't teach gratitude. It teaches expectation. I had loved my son deeply, but I had protected him too much from consequences. And when consequences finally arrived, they arrived through me. That wasn't cruelty. That was correction. Months passed. I stopped checking court papers. Stopped replaying conversations. Stopped wondering what I could have done differently. Because peace doesn't come from perfect answers. It comes from acceptance. One afternoon, I received a call from the workshop director. He asked if I'd consider leading a small weekly class, not about tools, but about life skills. Responsibility. Integrity. Boundaries. I accepted. The first day, I told the group something I had learned the hard way. Never confuse love with obligation. And never let anyone, even family, convince you that your dignity is negotiable. They listened quietly. Some nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. That meant it mattered. As the year ended, I realized I hadn't thought about revenge in a long time. Because real revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about refusing to fall with them. I didn't win because my son lost a house. Or because my daughter-in-law left. I won because I didn't let betrayal turn me bitter. I let it turn me precise. Careful with my trust. Clear with my boundaries. Honest with myself. If there's one thing I would tell any parent watching this, it's this. Helping your children is noble. But rescuing them from accountability is dangerous. Love them. Support them. Stand beside them. But never disappear for them. Because when you erase yourself long enough, someone else will eventually try to finish the job. I paid for my son's wedding. And the next day, he threw me out. That moment could have ended me. Instead, it introduced me to the strongest version of myself I had ever known. And that man? He sleeps peacefully. Wakes up without regret. And walks forward without carrying what no longer belongs to him. That is how this story ends. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with freedom.